Guys, I want to thank you for sitting in on this video. This is going to be a high-level trainer on how to create simple assets and simple pick lists inside of your Omnidek forms. Now, if you're evaluating your forms, your Excel spreadsheets or your PDF forms, generally you don't have down selection criteria opportunities. Inside of Omnidek, you do, and I'll give you a couple of examples of what this looks like. If I were to come in and create a form. And let's say maybe we have just a simple pick list of just a job, right? When I select that, that data source comes from what we call assets. We have a couple of different ways to leverage the assets. This is a simple pick list. So this is what's called asset lists in the form designer, which we'll get into that in a bit. We can also use asset detail, which is effectively selecting an asset, but pulling back detail from a spreadsheet or maybe their sourced database inside of your accounting system or ERP platform. An example of that here would be if I select a client here, it pulls in their, the customer and the address and city, state, and zip. These data points can come from your asset databases, and you can create those as simply as just importing spreadsheets or just creating just pick lists of items. It also allows us to do mathematics off of them too. So let's say, for example, like this technician has a pay rate and or a billable rate here. So what we do is if I come in here and add a calculation here of 5 hours, it'll do my math out of that criteria too. So we can leverage, odometer readings or unit prices to put on a particular work ticket. It's a very flexible, very powerful application of using the data that's stored in spreadsheets today to actually populate the form or stored in databases. So what I'm going to do here is just to kind of show you how to set up a real simple asset list. And then I'll show you in advanced ways that if we've got a larger spreadsheet, how we can go ahead and import that spreadsheet. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my admin section and I'm going to go to the assets screen here. Now, to show you what assets look like in a fully developed system, these are all the different spreadsheets and lists of things. I mean, this is as simple as, or as complex as my vendor and my customers that are being synchronized out of my accounting system. See, I can't edit these. It's because it's actively being synchronized from my accounting system on it every 5-10 minutes or nightly, depending on the service velocity. It could also be as simple as rainfall, right? And we simply have none, half inch, 1 inch, or more than an inch. So these asset lists for us vary tremendously based upon what information we're gathering and how we wanted that to impact the form. So what I wanted to do is go ahead and create a very simple a simple asset type that we call weather conditions, right? So on a daily report, for example, you may have weather conditions for snowy, rainy, windy, sunny, whichever, right? So what I can do here is I'm going to come in and say weather conditions. This is where I name the asset. Now I can restrict access to certain users. I can allow tracking on certain things or not allow tracking as if we maybe had a specific asset that maybe we didn't want them to track against if it was private or something that a little more sensitive information in there is editable. You can take the ability to edit that away from certain people to kind of have more rigidity in the system there. But for at the end of the day, the columns themselves, this is going to be what we're creating over here. So this is a very simple single column list. Some of the more advanced ones would be where we would actually build those out multiple column headers. But this is the column name. Now you're going to be restricted. You can't have spaces in here. You can use underscores. But let's say, for example, I want to go ahead and put this in, and I'm going to call this weather underscore conditions. And this is going to be my column. And then from here, I could actually import dates. I could do integers and I could do decimal places, right? So if we're pulling in phone numbers or something along those lines, we're pulling in odometer readings, dates of last service, things like that. We have different columns that support that particular column, right? Just like we do in Excel in some cases. Now we also support a true false, but the more complex pieces is actually the ability to control relational tables, and we use unique identifiers as well as relationship tables to help create aggregate tables for like jobs and cost codes, right? Or line items on a PO and the PO table. These are things that are done in a secondary video that's more advanced setup for relational tables. So I definitely encourage you, if you're looking to do more advanced stuff, go skip ahead to that video or continue watching this one so you can get a full breadth of it. And then we'll get into more of the meat of the building the relationship tables in that subsequent video. Now, if I'm just setting up a very simple list here of weather conditions, I can just use text. Weather conditions are probably going to be under 100 characters, but I could bump it up or down if I needed to. So this would give me more, these are character spaces. So if I needed 400 spaces to kind of have a little bit broader description, I can do that. I'm simply going to come in here and add this. And then I'm going to flag this as visible. We turn this on and off to allow something to be visible on a pick list. You can imagine if I was importing maybe things that are like last four of a social or a hire date or something like that, that I didn't want everybody to see, but I still referenced it maybe for some internal purposes. I can actually unflag this on and not make it visible on dropdown so people don't have the option to build a form with that information. So now that I've built weather conditions, I've simply created this one column asset type, and I'm going to hit save. And that now puts that particular asset type down here at the bottom. Now, if I come into the weather conditions, I see that there's nothing in here yet. So what I want to do is I want to come in here and add a single row. So by clicking add a row, I type in my first condition, which could be sunny. I save it. It now puts it here on the form. Now, if I add another row, say windy, and I'll add one more, rain. All right, so this is as simple as it is to build a asset list inside of the system. Now, where this will show up is if I go into the form designer and I'm going to go build a new form from scratch, and let's say this is going to be a daily report. And on the first section of the form, I want to have a question that actually has that pick list on it. I'm going to go into my asset lists, drag it onto the form, engage in the form. And once I've put in my caption and my reference, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select weather conditions, which is the one that I just set up. And I'm going to simply mark it here on the form. Now, by selecting this now, whenever I go build a form and I go select that question, it's going to show me those available selections that I just created. If I need to go back to that particular selection and go maybe add additional ones to it or remove some additional ones, I can come in back into the weather conditions and I can simply add or remove or modify just by clicking these buttons here to produce a new list or a new answer opportunity. That's as simple as it is to build a simple implementation of the asset list. Now, let's say, for example, though, we may have a broader opportunity to implement a spreadsheet. And let's say that spreadsheet is pretty big. It's maybe got my customer numbers and the name and the address and the city and the state and the zip and the ID number here. So for us, if I wanted to import this, I would simply do exactly what I did for the one column, but I would create additional columns for each one of these selections. So the first one I would do is I would create one for customer and then name and then address one. So let's go ahead and let's go set this up and I'll show you how we can import a full spreadsheet into the system. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back in and follow the same steps of adding an asset type. When I come here, I'm going to say this is going to be a new customers. I'm going to do my first column, which is actually customer. Be a text box here. I'm going to add the column. The next one I'm going to add is going to be name. The next one, address. And I have underscore one. That's how it's listed on the spreadsheet. And then I'm going to do city, state, and zip. Now, once I've set this up, I'm actually going to make this zip code and actually an integer because it's actually all numeric here. And then I'm going to add this column. So now I've got my base foundation here for importing from that spreadsheet. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mark all of these as able to be read because I don't have anything that's secretive in here. And then I'm going to simply save this selection. Now, if I go down to the bottom, I'll click on new customers. And now you see I don't have any data, but I do have all of my columns set up here. Now, if I'm ready, if I want to import these, I can either A, add a single row, just like I did earlier, and these would give me my opportunities to do it one at a time. Or B, I can import new customers just by clicking this. Now, if I click this, this is going to ask for a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet has to have the header, the exact match of the headers to match exactly to the spreadsheet prior to importing. If you don't get those right, then it's going to ignore some of them and it's actually going to fail upon the import. So a good way of doing this, if you want kind of a fail-safe way of not messing this up, is if you come into this and click the export all data, even though there's no data in here, this will serve as a template for you to simply copy and paste over all the data that you want to put in the system. So as this thing loads up here, just opening up here on the other monitor. So this now has opened up a blank spreadsheet with all of the table names properly listed here above. So I know the formatting is correct because it came from the system. Now what I've got over here is a secondary spreadsheet that has all my data that's in that same order. So all I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to copy and paste all of that information into my spreadsheet like so. And this now has all the information filled out properly for me to import. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in here and file and save as, say new customer import. Save that here. And then now, whenever I come in to import new customers, I'm going to choose that file. Let's see. And I'm going to click upload. It now gives me the acknowledgement that that upload was okay. And now all my data is stored here in the system. Now that all the data is in here, I can come in here and leverage this grid for different purposes. So like, let's say, for example, I wanted to kind of see everything maybe broken down by city. I could see all of my, projects, all my customers, and based on the city that they're in. So I have all of these functionalities for grouping and filtering. So I can go here and search items. Since I imported this, I can continually import new items, or I could come in here and add rows individually if I needed to maintain those over time. But this is as simple as it is to create asset lists inside of Omnidek. So that's a simple process of kind of laying the foundation of simple creation of either simple pick list or maybe more advanced spreadsheet importing using the Omnidek Assets Wizard. So I definitely encourage you continually exploring on our helper videos. Hopefully these will be good training resources for you for going ahead and getting started setting up your Omnidek system.